have a lot to say. I have a lot to say. I'm getting this very strong feeling to talk about my personal experience with ulcerative colitis. Perhaps it'll help somebody out there. I really hope so. So I'm making this video today to talk about the experience that I had and how I got through it. I succeeded in healing from ulcerative colitis. So I'll talk about my journey and how I healed. When I was 11 years old, I wasn't eating that well. I remember at that particular time in my life, I was eating a lot of microwave food. It was the 80s, and Zap, you know, radiate your food was the thing to do. I ate a lot of radiated food in the microwave. I remember not feeling that good. And at that time in my life, I dealt with stress at home. A lot of personal things, and my family situation had changed a lot. And I was only 11, so I didn't know how to really deal with it or adjust to it to a certain degree. And I internalized it. That was a really big thing. As a child, I was very fiery. And whenever I repressed that fire, my voice, my truth, speaking up, it internalized. And I did a lot of that at that age, and prior. At a very much younger age, like 5, 6, 7, I expressed myself a lot. Somewhere along the way, I stopped. And I just didn't know how to speak my truth. I just built it in. And when I was 11, I remember between the microwave food and the stress and internalizing my feelings, I remember that summer, I got very, very ill. And was just kind of like laid out in the summer, and it felt like the flu, but a little bit more digestive. And I just remember it didn't feel right. I'd also broken out into sores and was running to the bathroom very frequently. The sores went away. I thought, oh, by autumn I'll be better by the time school starts, and it was still there. I was going to the bathroom so much. At that time, maybe 8 times a day, and yes, bowel movements. And I remember age 12, 13, 14, it getting worse. And I remember getting thinner. And I remember being under tremendous amounts of stress because my family situation had changed again. At age 14, I finally saw a doctor. It took a long time because I didn't know what was going on. I talked about it and expressed it to my mom. And it was just being a kid and being a little bit sick. I remember I just adapted to it. That's just how I was back then. I spoke up about it, but I didn't make it a big fuss. And my mom heard me, but she also didn't make a big fuss about it either. But by 14, it was really standing out. And I finally went to a doctor and had a colonoscopy at 14, and they took a biopsy, and it was done without anesthesia, and it was just awful. Didn't last long, but a little bit's too much anyway, and was diagnosed finally with ulcerative colitis. And I remember I was immediately put on prednisone and thought to be getting better from that. Prednisone was a steroid. I was only 14 and I was taking these steroids. Age 14, 15, 16, 17, just being a teenager and living with ulcerative colitis was just not fun. I didn't go out. I was much an introvert. I had had a lot of issues growing up and abuse. At that age, I was very quiet and very withdrawn, and I was very different from the way I was when I was a kid. At the same time, I was also a very expressive artist, and that was one of the things that saved me. I was still obviously internalizing my feelings. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't getting therapy or help or any of that. I just was a kid living with it, not knowing what solutions were. Just listening to doctors, taking these pills. And I remember by the time I was 16, I was taking sulfasalazide, also known as azulfidine. When I was 17, I was diagnosed as anemic. Started taking iron pills. But I was a teenager, living with it, dealing with it, being in school and just holding it in until the bell rang. and just jetting to the bathroom as fast as I could, knowing I was going to make it. By the time I was 18, I didn't even speak up to my teachers about it until I was 18. And I finally got like this unconditional pass to go to the bathroom anytime I wanted to, because I had all these medical records and I was taking all this medication. And I had another colonoscopy at 18 because I had a serious flare-up because I was under a lot of stress. And then I had another flare-up at 20, and I had a colonoscopy then, and that's when I stopped. So, age 20 was a breaking point for me. I remember I was riding the subway, and I met this awesome girl. I knew it as soon as I looked at her, and we got off at the same train stop, and we just started talking. I hung out with her a week later. Turned out she was vegan, and so she showed me all these PETA pamphlets. She asked me, she said, "You want to know why I'm vegan?" I'm like, yeah, I've always admired vegetarians and vegans. Never was one of those people that ever put them down. So she showed me all these hardcore PETA pamphlets, and I saw the behind the scenes of what was going on in the slaughterhouses and the animal cruelty, and I gave up meat that day. It took a while for me to go vegan, and I was one of those I was a vegetarian who took as many vegan options as possible. That put me on an amazing journey, because then I started seeing how food affected my body. This is the thing. I did it for ethical reasons. I wasn't even thinking about my health. I just happened to notice 2 months later that I started feeling better, and my digestion got better, and my consciousness totally changed, and I actually had like a spiritual breakthrough. You know how it is, like when you get spiritual breakthroughs at really poignant times in your life? Well, that was one of them for me. So that put me on a new journey of immediately making completely new food choices. Like a year later, somebody gave me aloe vera juice, and I had a drink of that, and I felt so much refreshing, healing comfort in my colon in that little bit amount of time than I had in the 7 years of taking any medication. And that said a lot to me, showed me proof. At 21, I went cold turkey off of my medications, and at 21 I stopped seeing all doctors, and I said, I'm going to do this naturally because I see results so fast. I was excited. So then I'd say 2 years after that, I was working at a music studio, and I was looking through Spin magazine, and I saw a Giuliano article about raw foods, and I immediately got it. I immediately understood it. I immediately knew it was going to heal me. And like my consciousness said, this is going to heal you, and you need to move to a warm place to do it, because choosing raw options in Chicago was really lovely. It's just it was too cold or too polluted. And so that got me started in a completely new direction. I also learned about the benefits of eating food in its whole state as opposed to processed foods. That was another journey. So I knew I needed to move someplace warm. And without even making a plan, Hawaii opened up itself to me. A miracle happened. I knew I needed to leave Chicago. By 2000, the year 2000, my health was deteriorating. I mean, in a sense of stress. Stress of living in the city, stress of living around stressful people, stressful relationships. And at that time, I was repeating habits of unhealthy relationships. I was just adapted to it. For me, even though the food I was eating was amazing and it was helping my body, and I moved to Hawaii in 2001. I was studying every raw food book I could get my hands on. I trained myself. The health food store was actually run by these raw vegans. Oh my god. And eventually I got the position as the raw food chef there. And this was the thing. I said to myself, I might as well make the thing that's going to heal me my occupation, because it's going to be a full-time thing anyway, healing me. I had so many issues with food and food addictions and emotional eating. When I approached my health, my healing journey, I remember my weight went up and down a lot. My belly was swollen, and it was round at times, and sometimes it was flat. I went up and down on my healing journey because I was I'd been on medication. I had gotten over eating animals. I was dealing with trauma. There was so much also that I had not dealt with that it was going to take 15 to 20 years to really, really deal with these issues. Like that much time of ingrained patterns that were not healthy. Like I used to be 30 pounds heavier than I am now. So that's what I was dealing with then. And I would lose 30 pounds, gain 30 pounds. 3 years ago, my weight finally stabilized and I'm even. So when I embarked on raw foods, the detox was intense. And this was before the colon hydrotherapy. The detox was like a forever journey, it seemed. I feel so good now. And I have my detox moments because I'm human. But it's like, it was so ongoing, like colon stuff, emotional releases. It was just so ongoing for like a good 10 years. And eating the whole raw vegan lifestyle gave me a completely new relationship with food. And becoming a chef as well, working at the health food store and doing private work, catering for private people at their, like private work at people's homes. My raw food career, it blossomed so much because it was saving my life, so my passion was so ferocious with it. I dealt with issues that needed a long-term commitment so I would heal, and I got frustrated with myself so much. I'm like, I should be healed now. Why not? And I didn't know at the time that it was going to take a good 10-15 years to really deal with the long-term issues that I had had for previous times. I remember being in that world of ulcerative colitis so much and in being so much pain, just going, when is this going to end? I'd say collectively it lasted 20 with a lot of lingering symptoms. And I didn't go all raw completely because I couldn't. I needed to adjust. So I would incorporate as much as I could with cooked food, and then I would have like my 2 and 3 month jaunts of eating all raw, thinking I'm going to do it forever. It was just a lot of people felt like they had to be all raw because it did make you feel so good, but then there was like this period of adapting. So I couldn't do it all the way all the time, but I could do a lot of it all the time. Like, incorporate it into my everyday life. And it worked. And after 2 years, the ulcer officially left my body. And I was just dealing with symptoms by then. And the following years was just dealing and managing flare-ups. I learned how to manage the flare-ups. It took time. The really intense internal bleeding, pus, blood, and mucus, and the intense pain that made it really hard to function, that was like a good 16 years. And then after that, it was just like cramping and just like some discomfort, but nothing like what it was before. Just symptoms that really needed to be learned how to be dealt with. A period of years, what worked and what didn't work. And now I got the symptoms managed. And I do deal with fatigue occasionally, but it's like I'm still managing depression and anxiety and grief. Sometimes you still have to just manage things to keep them in a good place so they don't flare up. And that's where I am now. So living off the grid deprogrammed me in a sense where like I could feel electricity leaving my body. I could feel like the city leaving my body. And walking barefoot or being in the sun and like being naked outside is very deprogramming as well. And then I did the 10 days of colon hydrotherapy and parasites were leaving my body. Heavy metals were coming out on a daily basis. Years of crap were coming out. This 10 days of colon hydrotherapy, your sessions are 90 minutes long and they pump 20 gallons of water through your colon, and then they look at everything afterward. I'll just say over 10 days, so much left my body that it was just like, it was like a war zone that had gotten cleaned up. And it took some time for me to adjust after that to be looked at. And that's another thing about the journey with ulcerative colitis is these two things seem to seriously be what I deal with to manage it, is that a healthy vegan lifestyle with a lot of raw foods in it, high raw, letting go of issues and resolving unresolved issues. That's what it's been like for me because at a very young age, I dealt with a lot of trauma and didn't speak up and didn't know how to deal with my own feelings for a long time. And then when I did learn how to deal with my own feelings, I needed to learn how to communicate and break tons of patterns. And I swear that has been going on for, I'd say 20 years now, because the ulcer was repressed feeling. And the more that I expressed myself, the more the pain would leave. The more I ate raw foods, the more the pain would leave. I function differently, and I accept that, and so I know how to work with it and manage it. That's what I'll talk about, expressing my journey